This special episode of Addressing Gettysburg is brought to you by our friends over at Mason Dixon Distillery. On your next visit to Mason Dixon, mention Addressing Gettysburg, and you'll receive one free dessert per entree. So check them out at Mason Dixon Distillery, located at 331 East Water Street, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, it's hard with I love to watch these, like true crime things like Dateline or something like that. Only if Keith Morrison. I only like the ones that he does.
And you didn't suspect anything.
Yeah, that pesky DNA.
Jumped up out of nowhere.
But it's like a campfire story with him, like everything is just, it's like poetry.
Yeah, he's good.
Back on a rural road where people go to find their little slice of heaven. Mary Jones and her husband Mark set in for retirement.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
He's doing a good one.
Until one fateful night when their new neighbors appeared at a time when they shouldn't have, while Mary and Joe were sleeping.
Oh my God.
He sounds just like that.
Yeah, I love Keith Morrison. You got to watch Dateline. Keith Morrison. He's just a great storyteller, and he's just got this great voice. I mean, he's like everybody loves Bill Hader loves him. Bill Hader, the comedian.
He's and he's got this old chiseled looking face.
Yeah,
he's been around the block.
Oh yeah, like this leathery face and this like stark white hair. Yeah,
he's funny.
Oh no, he's great. But then there was that DNA. That pesky DNA.
I see you spent a lot of time practicing
this. The Cook County prosecutor couldn't deny it anymore.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
What the hell is that? Oh, it's Scotland the Brave because it's on autoplay. Let's try that again.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Oh, my God. Can't win for losing. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this special edition of Ask A Gettysburg Guide. Today, we are doing our first Ask A Guide in relation to an upcoming Get Out of the Car tour. I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but I didn't think of it now. It was actually my friend Pete. He said, you should do an Ask A Guide based on your upcoming Get Out of the Car tours. And I said, that is brilliant, you magnificent bastard. So thanks to Pete for that. And so we'll be doing this once a month in addition to our normal 2 Ask A Guides a month. Now we will do this from April through October. Regarding the current or the upcoming tour. And the upcoming tour is going to be on April 17th, right? 17th. Yep. And it is going to be about Greene's Brigade over on Culp's Hill. And here to talk about all of that with us is, of course, Lewis Trott, who has put all these tours together. Hello, Lewis.
Good morning.
Nice to have you back here in the studio to do one of these promo shows as opposed to over the phone.
Always good to be here.
With a bad connection.
I enjoy it. Yeah.
Yes, we always enjoy having you here. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. YouTube especially. Get into YouTube because we're going to start transitioning over there for a lot of stuff. Make sure that you have your notifications turned on. Also, if you use the Apple Podcast app, please leave a 5-star review. Reviews, liking, sharing, subscribing, and of course, telling your friends and enemies are the best ways to help us grow our audience. Okay, so Lewis, let's get on now to Greene's Brigade and Culp's Hill. First of all, why did you decide that this would be one of the tours we would do this year on the Get Out of the Car tour? Perfect timing, too, because they're starting to clear that area.
Yes. I don't know how I came up with this other than the fact that in September of last year, we did Lower Culp's Hill for one of the Get Out
That's
of the
true.
Car tours.
Yes.
So I look at different parts of the battlefield and I try to cover something on the 3 different days. And obviously something different.
Right.
And I just looked at this. I think for a little preview, on the 3rd day, which doesn't really deal with Greene's brigade necessarily, but the 66th Ohio comes out on the left of Greene's brigade, and nobody really ever talks about that.
Right.
And so, as you know, I go out to the field by myself usually on New Year's Eve, and I wander around, and I think that's when it struck me, hey, you know, how many people come out and see where the 66th Ohio
Right.
from Candy's brigade?
Because nobody even really knows that it's there.
No, and like you mentioned before, now that they're clearing away some of the trees, you can really get a better view of that. So that's how I developed this particular tour. And the quote comes from Greene. It's attributed to George Greene. My God, man, if they go out there, y'all go out there, they're going to swallow you up. He's talking to the 66 Ohio, who are going to go forward and actually be perpendicular to Greene's line. So that's sort of how I come about this particular tour.
So tell us about Culp's Hill, Greensburg. Give us some background on it before we get to the questions.
All right. So on the first day of the battle, July 1st, when the Union Army falls back to Cemetery Hill, eventually they're going to move a portion of their force over to Culp's Hill. It's going to be the 7th Indiana, who's actually from Cutler's Brigade. They don't fight on McPherson's Ridge on the first day of battle, but they show up advantageously for the Union on Culp's Hill. And so when Johnson's reconnaissance is coming out to find out if they can occupy the hill, or men from Ewell's corps, that's who they run into. It's men from the 7th Indiana, and they think, well, there's men up there, and they don't have any idea how many because it's dark, it's wooded.
They just know someone's up there.
Yes. And so the Confederates don't attack and occupy Culp's Hill. That gives the Union an opportunity to do that. When Slocum's 12th Corps moves up, eventually they're going to move up to Culp's Hill. And they're going to extend their line from Wadsworth's division from the 1st Corps from the top of Culp's Hill down towards Spangler's Meadow. And the 12th Corps is going to occupy that line. And they're going to develop breastworks that we'll talk about, and they're going to fortify that position, and they're going to sit there all day on July 2nd. Now, eventually, Longstreet's going to launch his assault over on the Union left. When they do that, everybody gets, nervous Nellies.
All in a tizzy.
Yeah, all in a tizzy. And eventually, Meade's going to order the 12th Corps to go to their left. Gary is going to say, well, we need somebody up here. Meade's going to agree to leave a brigade. That's going to end up being Greene's brigade, and that's how the rest of the 12th Corps is going to be pulled over to the left. They don't all go to the left. Some of them go south down on the Baltimore Pike and just hang out for a while at Rock Creek.
Go shopping at the outlets.
Get a little fishing in. And they're eventually going to come back. And we covered some of that when we did, again, that September tour, where we talked about George Stewart's Confederate brigade of Marylanders attacking. And we also did that same tour, Spangler's Meadow.
See, ladies and gentlemen, this is why you got to come out to more than one of them, because sometimes they might be related.
I try to
weave through,
connect some dots.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not exactly linear, but yeah.
You talked about a couple of things that I think you probably won't have time to get into on the tour, so let's get into it now. So you said that the 12th Corps was sent down, but Geary said, well, you ought to leave someone here. So who did Geary say that to?
He's talking to Meade, or one of Meade's aides. I can't remember if it's Meade directly or one of his aides.
Who's in charge? Who's in command of the 12th Corps when this order comes down?
Well, that's a problem with the 12th Corps, because coming up, Slocum is a wing commander.
Right.
And he never relinquishes this, even though you don't need a wing commander once you're set in place.
Right.
So Alpheus Williams, one of the division commanders, was elevated to corps command when Slocum is elevated to wing command. So Williams is actually still in charge of the corps. And then Geary is one of the other division commanders. And if I remember correctly, and I have to always go back and refresh my memory on this, I think it's Geary talking to Slocum and Meade. But Geary's the one that presses it, saying, we need to keep somebody here,
Right.
And so they agree to leave Greene's brigade. When the rest of the corps gets pulled off of Culp's Hill, though, Greene is then going to have to extend his line to the right, south, to attempt to occupy the position that had been vacated. And that's going to thin his line tremendously. If it's daylight when all this is happening and the attack happens in daylight, he's in real trouble. Mm-hmm. For the Union, though, they have darkness on their side. And so when the Confederates are attacking and they're also attacking uphill, they don't exactly know what's in front of them other than it's Union, and they fortify themselves. And they don't exactly know that much of the 12th Corps has been set away. And so that there's an opportunity here that they don't take advantage of it, because I don't think they realize the extent of the opportunity.
So when Johnson makes his attack, he's not aware that the 12th Corps or some troops at least have been moved from Culp's Hill?
He might have been aware, but he might not know the extent of it.
Okay.
Because if he does, if he knows exactly what's going on, he might place a force, a holding force in front of Greene to keep him in place.
And swoop around.
And sweep the rest around. The other problem with Johnson's attack is one brigade is not there, the Stonewall Brigade, because they've been out skirmishing on East Cavalry Field on July 2nd.
Right.
Because, you know, the Confederates are worried about getting flanked on their left, and so he only has 3 brigades he's attacking with. He doesn't have the Stonewall Brigade because they're still out in the, they've been skirmishing all day, and they're not going to relieve them. He tells Walker, is the commander of the Stonewall Brigade at this time, he tells Walker, when you feel it's secure out there, you can come join the attack. Well, Walker, he doesn't want to leave too early,
Right.
because he don't want to be responsible for getting flanked. So by the time he gets there on the 2nd, there's nothing, he's not going to be able to help him. And then he does, the Stonewall Brigade takes part in the attack on the 3rd, but by then, the Union Army's moved back. So, but if Johnson realizes the opportunity to its fullest extent, he can simply move around to the left, and he can come through Spangler's Meadow, drive towards the Baltimore Pike, and that's the Union supply line, and cut that line, and then go from there. So
you mentioned also breastworks. How did because we're doing this about Greene's brigade, and so what was the, what am I trying to say? What was the role that Greene had in building those breastworks?
Well, Greene is an old engineer. Now he's the oldest general in the Union Army here at Gettysburg. He's 62 years old. He was born in 1801. He graduates West Point in 1823, but he comes out of West Point in the artillery branch. He's an artilleryman. Okay. I think he spends 10 or 12 years in the Army, but he never rises above the rank of lieutenant. It's all in the artillery. And so, back in today's Army, you're going to get booted from the Army if you're a lieutenant 12 years in. There's something wrong. But he leaves the Army, and that's where he picks up his engineering career, dealing with railroads and building bridges and stuff like that. That's where he becomes a known engineer. And that's the background that plays into building the breastworks. Now, his brigade had built breastworks at Chancellorsville also. So this wasn't anything new to them. When they get up on Culp's Hill, Wadsworth's division is going to fortify their position. And again, that is on Greene's left.
Which is like the north-ish facing slope.
Yeah.
Between Stevens Knoll and the top of Culp's Hill.
In the area where Slocum's Monument is today, looking sort of towards the northeast.
Yeah.
So they start building breastworks, and Greene and some of the other subordinates go to Slocum, and they say, Geary, I think it is, they request, should we build breastworks here? And Geary says, we don't want to get in the habit of doing this, because if you build breastworks, your troops aren't going to come out from behind, come out from behind the breastworks and attack. It's going to make them, want to stay behind what they know is secure. But you can if you want. So they go ahead and they spend all day, or at least till about noon or 1 o'clock on July 2nd, building these breastworks. And they extend from up on Culp's Hill, actually from where Wadsworth was, around the top of Culp's Hill, all the way down beneath that saddle in between Upper Culp's Hill and Lower Culp's Hill, down on the eastern side of Lower Culp's Hill also. So there were more breastworks built than just up there with Greene.
Right.
And then when the rest of the 12th Corps leaves that area, that's what Greene is extending his line down towards. He's filling in these other breastworks that have been vacated. Those breastworks are eventually going to be occupied by the Confederates.
Okay.
Stewart's Brigade.
So, what happens during the fighting? So the bulk of the 12th Corps goes away.
Yep.
Geary says you ought to leave someone, and they say fine. Greene, because Meade wants the whole entire 12th Corps to be sent to the left, right?
Yes, and Meade's not hanging out over there. He's monitoring what's happening on his left, which is Sickles' Corps is getting destroyed. So they need somebody, and I don't want to say he's in a panic, but he's in a panic. And he's just sending troops over there.
Yeah.
Because he sees this breakthrough that's occurring. And so he sends them over there, whether they're needed or not. The story tells us probably not, because part of them head straight south. And
right.
They don't take part
they don't
at
even
all.
Get there. Yeah.
And so the other troops that do get over there, it's the role they play is
they're
very
not
minimal.
very heavily
Yeah,
engaged.
It's very minimal.
Yeah.
So,
but you never know.
Yeah.
So you got to send them. But in the meantime, Greene is sitting there with what, 1,400-ish?
About that.
Yeah, soldiers. And he's got to cover that whole spanse.
They spread them out. Again, they have the hill working to their advantage. They have darkness working to their advantage, and they just spread out and do the best they can.
Yeah.
So,
and then the Confederates make their attack. It's starting to get dark or dark?
It's getting dark, or just about dark. It's about 7 o'clock.
It's dark in the woods.
Yeah. And there's no daylight savings time back then. So whatever ambient light they do have at that point out in a clearing is sort of taken away by the wooded area.
By the woods, yeah.
All the foliage and stuff.
And how does the attack go down?
Coming from the Confederate point of view, it's James Jones' Brigade of Virginians, and then to his left is Nichols' Brigade. It's the 2nd Louisiana Brigade. They are under the command of Jesse Williams. Nichols is not here. He's wounded. He actually lost his foot at Chancellorsville. And so they are going to attack the hill. If you read Union accounts of it, they make like 4 separate attacks going up the hill. To Nichols' left, the Louisiana Brigade's left, would be George Stewart's Marylanders. And those are the ones that are going to move in eventually and occupy the breastworks around the area of Lower Culp's Hill.
Okay.
Eventually, they are going to, it's David Ireland's 137th New York Regiment is going to bend back their right, and they're going to occupy what is known as the Traverse. It's this other line of breastworks that sort of goes perpendicular to the north-south line of breastworks on Upper Culp's Hill, and they're going to occupy that Traverse to keep the Confederates from, once they move in that Lower Culp's Hill area, from turning to the right and just rolling up the Union line. And like I mentioned earlier, eventually these Union troops are going to come back. When they come back, that's going to be Kane's Brigade. George Sears is at the top of the hill, extending downward to the right.
George Sears Greene.
George Sears Greene, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's just for the people that don't know.
He's going to be extending his brigade downhill to the right, and it's Kane's brigade, Thomas Kane. I always want to call him Charles Foster Kane. And all the young people don't know what I'm
Citizen
talking about. Yeah. Kind of an overrated movie, but we'll talk about that another time. But that's Kane's brigade that's supposed to be down there. He's got 3 regiments.
Yeah.
They've been pulled off. So when Kane's brigade comes back, that's when they realize the Confederates are in our breastworks, and they've got to figure out what to do. And that's going to lead to what we talked about in September, that dawn attack before, about 4:30. They're going to open up and drive these men out.
Eventually, Greene will get help with the rest of the
He's
Corps
gonna get a lot
coming
of-
back. Well, actually, before the Corps comes back,
He's going to get help
from the Second Corps and the First Corps and
Sixth Corps.
Sixth Corps.
That's on the 66th Ohio that I mentioned previously.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm thinking of another question. They're going to come back, but he does get one regiment from the Sixth Corps that I think it's one of your questions.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we get to
yeah.
the questions. Okay. So he is going to get some help. It's not just Greene's Brigade all out there by their lonesome the whole time. But I mean, a lot of the help, like what was the unit from the Second Corps that came over that, like, as soon as they got in the field?
71st Pennsylvania.
71st Pennsylvania.
They come over and they spend some time, say, hey, how's it going?
And then the Confederates fire a volley and they go, let's go back to where we came from.
Yeah. It was warmer on the other side of the ridge, and it's kind of cold over here. Let's go. They come over and they don't
really do much.
I don't have any good thing to say about them.
No.
Now, during Pickett's charge, you're doing wonderful work. So
yeah, now that's a different story over there. But they just weren't ready yet. That's all.
Yeah,
they called on them a day early.
Yeah,
they were
their
just
place.
Yeah, they're like, nah, we're not feeling this ground. It's like this.
I think they showed up. It's like, you know what? If we fight over here hard and eventually put a monument up, who's going to come over here and look at it?
Yeah.
Let's go on back and do something bigger and get a better monument. That's what it's about.
Okay, so why don't we? So is that it for the background? Basically, the idea of the tour. Okay. Really quick though, I mean, is there anything that we're going to see on this tour that is along the lines of the get out of the car theme? That people may not have seen before because they usually just drive, if they even drive through. I mean, let's face it, not everybody goes to Culp's Hill, Lewis. Not everybody goes. So if they do, they just drive, right? Because it's just like, well, what am I going to do? There's just woods there, and they're not going to get out. But we're requiring that you do that. We will drag you out of your car because it is the name of the tour series, Get Out of the Car. So what interesting things might we see along the way?
I think what's really interesting when you get out and look at the 66th Ohio's position, it's, they talk about, the Confederates talk about having to come up this mountain.
Yeah.
And if you look, you're in front of the 149th Pennsylvania, look, it's a hill. It's in the woods. But if you get up there where the 66th Ohio is, that's a steep ledge that falls off there. And that's what Confederates are, trying to come up. So we'll see that. We'll see a couple interesting rocks that show up later on in some Edwin Forbes sketchings and a painting. We'll see some other rocks that they decided at one point to put some advertising on for, what was it?
Liver pills, yeah.
So we'll see that. And we'll just talk about what happened. Like we've talked about, the Park Service is starting to clear out some of that, and it really has made it helpful. At this time of year, too, you're not going to have to deal with all the weeds and stuff that may grow up later on. But the amount of trees they've taken out makes it a lot more, feasible to walk down there without feeling like you're, Paul Bunyan traipsing through the woods or something.
Well, and most importantly, you can see. You can see what a better idea of what the ground may have looked like at the time.
Looking both ways too. It's interesting to walk into those woods and look back, and then you see what the Confederates were looking at.
I mean, I remember last winter, Bob Steenstra and I went walking, and we went in. You know where that lawn is around that S curve by the Jones Brigade plaque?
Yep.
We went into the woods in that area and walked along the base of the hill, and it really wasn't until I did that I realized what a hill, what a face that face of the hill is. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, without like ladders and grappling hooks, like what are you even going to bother? So like you got to go around it. You can't assail that.
And there's one Confederate, and I'll have it there out on the tour. I don't have it with me today in the official records, where a Confederate commander, when he's writing up his record, says you need scaling ladders to make this attack.
Yeah. So, wasn't that Jones?
It could have been.
I think it was Jones.
Although Jones gets wounded. We'll talk about that too,
Yeah, sure. We don't give it all away.
No. You got to come out.
Yeah, you got to come out. April 17th, by the way. Okay, so
10 o'clock.
Let's get, 10 o'clock in the morning, April 17th. Let's get going here with the questions. These are questions from our patrons who are always there in a pinch when we need them. And we said, we need questions about Greene's Brigade on Culp's Hill. And they sent them in. And once again, don't forget that this episode is brought to you commercial-free by Mason Dixon Distillery. Okay, so here we go. Questions from patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg. With our brand new first lieutenant level, $25, you get video, better video than this stuff that you're getting for free. Here we go. Brian Derenick has the first question. He says, how was the military importance of the position not realized, which in turn could have led to the loss of Culp's Hill, made Cemetery Hill untenable, and a possible Union disaster?
That's a good question.
I know.
We'll have to ask George Meade. I think that, if you're students of the battle, if you recall, on the morning of July 2nd, Meade gets with his commanders, and he's going to try to figure out the feasibility of attacking the Confederates from that area. And Warren goes out there, and Slocum and the division commanders and such, and they look at the ground, and they come back to Meade saying, "You can't. There's offensive operations in this area can't happen. It's not feasible to attack." So maybe in the back of his mind, he's saying, "Well, as long as we have somebody there just to hold on, they're not going to. Maybe perhaps they can't attack us either if we can't attack them from this area because it is so steep and rocky." The other thing I think, and this is all conjecture. We don't know really what Meade was thinking, or at least I haven't read what he was thinking about this. But I think the violence and just the suddenness of Sickles' line breaking, and the threat that posed on the left side of his line, that just occupied
chaos.
Yeah, that occupied Meade's mind so much that he saw his left being rolled up by Longstreet.
The emergency at that time was the left.
Yeah, because...
And you've got to take care of...
Again, Meade rides out to Sickles. He knows there's not troops, contrary to what Sickles is going to say later. They have an occupied little round top with troops. There's a signal station up there.
Yeah.
So he realizes the problems of Sickles' line when this attack is going to start. Right. And so I think that fully engages his mind. He's like, oh, my God, we got to get everybody there. Because if you bust through that line right there...
It's over.
Yeah, you're coming back there. You're so close to where all the artillery reserve is and all those supply wagons.
Baltimore
so
Pike.
That occupies it.
Yeah, it's like if you have someone coming in with two bleeding wounds, and one is a superficial flesh wound on the chest, and the other one is the femoral artery, you're going to stop the bleed. Maybe you'll throw something on the chest, but you're going to work on the femoral artery until that's under control.
Yep.
Before you can then go and really take care of the chest. And I think like the femoral artery was Sickles' line. No pun intended, because he lost a leg.
And up to this point, on Culp's Hill, you've had this artillery duel that on the Union side, it encompasses East Artillery, East Cemetery Hill also, with Latimer's unit over there on Benner's Hill. So that's all you've got going on so far. They haven't attacked yet, so you're just thinking, oh, my God, you got to stop the bleeding over on our left.
Yeah. Going back earlier, though, and stop me where I'm wrong here, because this is just my understanding of the events and everything, okay? July 1st, Howard's in command by the time they're all falling back to Cemetery Hill. He's got Confederates coming at him from where he can see, where he just was, the northwest and the north. And he's got to rally his broken corps and the First Corps and somehow solidify the line on Cemetery Hill. And is he the one who extends the First Corps up Stevens Knoll?
I think it's Hancock.
It's okay. When
Hancock gets here.
So Hancock gets here. He extends that line.
Yeah, he sends troops
and he's
over there.
the one that sends the 7th Indiana up onto Culp's Hill to kind of check things out on the other side of it, right?
If I recollect right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not that they didn't recognize or that no one recognized the importance of it. It's just that, again, with the femoral artery thing, Howard has to worry about holding and collecting himself and strengthening his position on Cemetery Hill before he could even think of it, because he doesn't know July 2nd is going to happen. He doesn't know what's going to go on. We look at Culp's Hill today and we go, oh man, like this is the key to everything, or whatever we think. And but he didn't know any of that stuff. He didn't know. He's new to the field. Like, he's only been there for several hours. Like, and most of his attention was not being paid to that area. It was enough to say, leave somebody here. Yep. But he was focusing more on everything that was going on north of town. Right?
Yeah. And
so, I mean, just psychologically, you're not thinking of Culp's Hill at that moment, but it's not until calmer eyes come up in Hancock, and he's able to look and assess it, because sometimes it's easier when you're new to this situation to see really what you got, right?
Yeah.
And then Hancock's one of those guys.
Yeah. And so much is going on. He's and those troops coming out of the town are disorganized and stuff. The Union troops that are falling back, he's just trying to get them together and stop the stampede. And so luckily for the Union cause, somebody does recognize that, hey, we should put some men over here. On the other side of the ledger is the Confederates. If they'd have moved with anybody more expediently and put somebody on Culp's Hill, maybe then you have a different story. And not to get into the Ewell should have attacked Cemetery Hill debate or anything, because that becomes a useless debate.
Yeah.
If and again, he's wore out too. His troops have been fighting all day. But if he could have got somebody up there on that hill a little bit sooner, you've got the troops up there. So when the Union's starting to move over there to Stark, they don't know. It would
be the reverse. Yeah.
So,
Roy Mead, he says, "Hi Matt, Eric, and Lewis. My question is, did Greene's Brigade's veterans ever receive the same type of recognition during their lifetimes that people now give to Chamberlain or the Iron Brigade? Thanks for the great work you do." That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Let's just say no.
No. We do. Because
we do
recognize
now.
it. But, the Iron Brigade got their moniker from some other battle, and they had their distinctive hats.
Got their what?
Moniker.
Moniker?
Moniker. Isn't it moniker?
It's a moniker, isn't it? Isn't it moniker? Yeah.
I just pull my tail between my legs and head back to Richmond.
You threw me off. I thought it was some new...
I am a rube. I admit it. I don't know. Some days I'm proud of it. Some days I'm not. But,
you know what it is? It's a pet peeve of mine. I can't... And it's not because... I just can't let... I know people know better. I knew you knew it was moniker, but you just said nomiker. And I've done that. I've said the wrong word when I knew the right word. And I can't let you go without having corrected you, so the audience knows that you know the difference.
He's a big fan of pointing out other people's faults.
Well, and that too.
Yeah. I can handle it. Anywho.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So they got their distinction in a battle prior to Gettysburg.
Right.
And so they bring that with them, and they're known,
Right, Greene's Brigade didn't have...
Yeah, the Iron Brigade's known by the Confederates by the time they get here.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the case of the Chamberlain, well, that's just the regiment, the 20th. That's not Strong Vincent. Nobody runs around talking about Strong Vincent's Brigade, although we got a tour coming up later on this season with that. But they just don't. They do great work here. Greene does great work here. They just don't. I don't think they have that pedigree, that history that some of these other brigades do, and that's why we don't. You don't see them.
And then they're also sent west after this battle, and nobody really. It's this army that gets the attention.
They are sent west, and Greene's going to be injured in a battle out west, and he's going to leave the army for a year. I think it's around a year. When he comes back, he's put in sort of nominal positions. So his involvement with that brigade ends after, shortly a few months after this battle. So it just doesn't have that pedigree that some of these other brigades.
Yeah.
But the people telling this story give Greene's brigade their due.
I feel like for Greene and Culp's Hill in general, and especially the 137th New York, that their day is about to come in the historiography of the Battle of Gettysburg, because in the next couple of years, Culp's or Little Round Top will be closed.
Yep, that's a good point.
And Culp's Hill will be open and cleared. And now we get to hear about. I mean, to me, it's just the story of Greene's brigade is a little more terrifying to me, because, you know, now maybe Chamberlain and Vincent's brigade and all those guys on Little Round Top didn't know this, but I know that there's plenty of help coming their way.
Yep.
And the Confederates have nothing behind them. So if they take Little Round Top, they probably aren't going to be able to hold it for long, because the Sixth Corps is coming up, you know, all this stuff.
And what are you going to do with it when you get it? If you get it?
Exactly. Culp's Hill, on the other hand, you got 1,400 men against almost 5,000 Confederates. So close to the Baltimore Pike.
Yep.
I mean, it's...
They hear wagons later that night on the Pike. They think maybe they're retreating.
Yeah.
And
you can see... you know, when you go at certain parts on Culp's Hill, at this time of year especially, if you look through the trees, you can see cars on the Baltimore Pike. It is very close, dangerously close to leave that unprotected.
Yeah, I do think he asked about, I think, how veterans perceived it. In some of the official reports about the action, some of the commanders mentioned that Greene's brigade saves the Army of the Potomac here at Gettysburg.
Okay.
So there was some acknowledgement. Again, you know, somebody writes a book later in modern times about the Iron Brigade.
Yeah.
Nolan, I think, who's writing a book about Greene's brigade. And
someone needs to.
Greene is not, he's not of the vein of Chamberlain. Again, Chamberlain had a regiment, not a brigade, but, you know, he's sort of a self-promoter.
Well, and like,
he writes his memoirs and he writes several different things.
He writes a lot.
And then
gives speeches.
Jeff Daniels shows up.
And then Jeff Daniels. It's over there. Once you get Jeff Daniels speaking your words.
Yeah, who wants to play Greene in a movie? Some old guy.
Who would you get to play Greene?
I don't know. All the good ones are dead.
Yeah, exactly. John Reynolds. We got a lot of names from our
What's he doing
generals here.
Thought he was dead.
John Reynolds is alive and kicking.
Welcome back.
He says, when trying to rank the most important performances during the battle by a regiment or brigade, where does the performance of Greene's brigade rank in your opinion?
It's up there. Based on what we just talked about, you know, if the Confederates bust that line right there and they keep moving towards the west, they're eventually going to get to the Union supply line, and the Union Army is going to have to do something else. It's going to make their line untenable.
Yeah,
the Union, and so it's right up there. But again, like you said earlier, people might do a drive-by on Culp's Hill.
Yeah,
I know way back when I did my examination, my oral exam, going out on a guide on a tour for a 2-hour tour, you had to include Culp's Hill. Mm-hmm. And so you're just driving, you're talking as best as fast as you can, because it's a timed event. But on a normal 2-hour tour now, you mention Culp's Hill, and you say, hey, this went on over there. But you don't really go over there and investigate it like you do Pickett's Charge.
I mean, I would imagine
Little Round Top.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if you if you tried to explain even briefly, you know, well, on July 2nd, there was just one brigade, and, you know, the fighting took place at night, and then blah, 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 and then everybody came back, and then the next morning, the fighting resumed, but now everybody's there, and it's just like, that would just, to me, I would think if they're actually like interested and curious, like that would just lead to questions, and you'd end up spending a lot of time there.
When I talk about, especially the July 3rd morning action over there, it's in context of Lee's plan. That disrupts Lee's plan. Lee's original plan for July 3rd is not what we know today as Pickett's Charge.
Right.
It's to resume the attack from both flanks. When the Union Army attacks over there, that disrupts that. So that's the context I talk about it. And that's what we do today. But after this place was established as a National Military Park and people started coming here, that was the place to go because that's where you could see the battle damage. You know, these trees shot up. The breastworks were more evident back then. And so that's where you went. You could actually see what happened.
Right.
And today we don't have that. Those trees are gone. Remnants of you can see where the breastworks were. But you're right. Hopefully they're going to rehab Little Round Top in the fall, and that's going to last a while. I think that the natural inclination will be to move over to Culp's Hill.
And it's a good opportunity for guides who might want to talk about Culp's Hill, but like you said, you don't have the time in a tour. Well, now you do because you can't go up Little Round Top.
And I know you've had Charlie Fennell on, and that's his baby.
Yeah.
And I can't disagree with him that's the important spot on the field.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I think Little Round Top is a more romantic hill.
You can see the sunset.
You can see the sunset. It looks cool. It's half bald.
Yeah.
Like me. And it's
the looks cool part or the half bald?
The half bald part.
Okay.
Unfortunately. No, and you have a guy like Chamberlain who really knew how to write.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is it captures the imagination. And it's this little regiment on the end of this long line of regiments, and it all falls down to them.
Yeah.
But it really didn't fall out. So come on.
Yeah.
But it's a great story.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful sunsets.
I think it's, back to his question, it's very important. The way the field is laid out for modern visitors and all that, it doesn't get the dimension that it probably should. So,
Kate Von D, she asks, when was Greene's brigade relieved? I know that Kane's brigade moved in sometime during the night, followed by Candy. Can you clarify how and when that relief took place? Thanks, guys. Matt, you are handsome. Well, thank you, Katie. That is very nice of you to say.
She didn't mention cool. She just said handsome.
She just said handsome.
That is a good question. As I mentioned earlier, Kane's brigade, Thomas Kane, not Charles, was to the right of Greene. And then Candy's brigade was sort of in the back as a reserve. And so those two brigades get pulled away. And if you ever want to remember the brigades, it's Greene, Candy, Kane. I'm sure everybody's already heard that. When they come back, the fighting over there ends probably around 10 o'clock, the last of the Confederate attacks. And once they're pushed back, the Union Army is going to move back in. Kane's brigade is going to come back and realize their trench works have occupied, but they're going to stay towards the right of Greene's brigade. They're just a little bit further back, and there's a rock there that has a monument or a plaque to the 14th Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Probably in that area.
Yeah.
And you'll see the monument to the 111th Pennsylvania. That's part of Kane's brigade. So they're in that area. And they could probably reestablish their line around midnight or so. I'd say between 11 and 12 on the night. When Candy's brigade comes back, they're going to be sort of dispersed. And that's why you see, to me, it's like a clump of monuments, especially as you go up the hill before you go up to the top where Greene's monument is. Not following the road, but following the terrain, just going straight north. Because you've got the 1st Maryland Eastern Shores Monument up there. You got the 150th Pennsylvania. But then on the bottom, you have the 147th Pennsylvania Arlo Pardee. That field is named after him. And then you have what we're going to talk about, the 66th Ohio. They're part of Candy's brigade. They get sent to the left of Greene's brigade. But that's after midnight. It's probably around 1 o'clock in the morning they're getting back and trying to... They're not sent to all these different places right then, but they're moving back and sort of held in reserve. And then the Maryland Eastern Shore unit is kind of confusing because they're the ones that come in to the right of Greene's line, and they get accused of shooting the backs of some Pennsylvanians, and then they leave. But then their monument's up at the further north along that line. It's right there before the hill really goes up. So their action's a little bit confusing.
But that's Lockwood's brigade?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm getting my brigades mixed up. You are right.
Wait. Oh, I wasn't correcting you. I was asking you.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me make sure. Start throwing out all these.
Isn't Eastern Shore? That's Lockwood, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But when these units come back, especially Candy's is spread out.
Yeah.
You know, the 5th Ohio down there with the owl on the rock, you see where their position is. You also have the 7th Ohio is on the lower portion of the hill. But as far as the timing, I think Kane gets back first and gets into a position before Candy does. Candy's still held in reserve, and then they sort of get spread out. Okay. You have the 5th Ohio, let's say, everybody knows where the owl's on the rock on the lower end, and all the way at the top, you got the 66th Ohio. So they don't stay together as a brigade.
So it's basically, that's kind of indicative of what a mess it was when they all came back. It's dark.
And you got Confederates now in the trenches that
down on lower Culp Hill.
Yeah, or Kane's brigade. So Kane can't go there right now. They're not able to reoccupy that line right now. So they're just waiting for the next day to come, and that's when they drive them out.
All right, let's see. The Great Trinetti, he says, why is Greene's monument up near the observation tower, his left flank, and not in the middle of the line?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't have a specific answer. I think that's a prominent hill, so you put it up there. He's pointing down. That monument was put in dedicated in September of 1907. So Greene is dead by this point. He dies in 1899.
Okay.
He was born in 1801.
Almost made it 100 years. Yeah.
So
good for him.
He used to be, when he comes back into the Army. So when the war breaks out, he's been out of the Army for quite a while. Again, he was an engineer working on railroads and bridges and such. He comes back in. He is going to be the colonel of the 60th New York. So that's his former regiment. Not saying that that's why the monument's there, but it is a prominent spot. And if you come further, as he's facing out into the woods, pointing at the Confederates attacking the line, you come to the right of that. That area is pretty crowded with monuments that were already there when Greene's monument. All those monuments get put in the late 1880s.
Okay.
So it's pretty much monumentalized by that point. And I think it's just the prominence of that hill. I
always took it as, because it's on the top of the hill, he's the guy responsible for really holding that hill.
Yeah.
When it was at the most risk was when he was the only guy there.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's
I think it's more dramatic up there.
And he was the one that was really in favor of the breastworks.
Yep.
And convinced Geary that, let's do that there and have a great time with the breastworks and stuff. We'll have a big party. And then, so, I mean, he's like the hero of Culp's Hill.
Yeah. And it was...
Is he known as that? Can we coin that? Have we ever heard that before in relation to Geary?
You can make it a Addressing Gettysburg original.
Well, let's do that. Not Geary, I'm sorry, Greene. Greene is the hero of Culp's Hill. Thank you.
What's interesting is, to me, he has an all New York brigade. Mm-hmm. He's got the 60th, 78th, 102nd, 149th, 137th New York regiments. He is not a New Yorker. He's from Rhode Island. His brother, he's an old man. His son was a lieutenant on the Monitor. Okay. When the Monitor is having its battle with the Merrimack. Mm-hmm. Now, his son is in charge of the aiming the gun and shooting the gun and stuff. And he's a lieutenant. The lieutenant in charge of the Monitor is wounded during the fight, and Greene's son actually takes over. And is before the
So they're a family of leaders, the Greenes.
Well, Rhode Island has a lot of mariners.
Yeah.
Is that a good word?
Yeah,
Mariners?
That's a good one.
So it makes sense that one of the guys is in the Navy.
Sure.
His daughter is going to marry the son of Hannibal Day, who's also here at Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. His brigade fights down, or division fights down in the
Greene's daughter or Greene's son's daughter?
Greene's daughter.
Greene's daughter
is going to marry the son, who's also an old man.
Yeah.
Hannibal Day's an old man.
Right. Okay. So their kids would be the same age-ish or something. Yeah.
So I just, all these little family connections are interesting.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. They're all military families. They would know each other somehow.
He lost one son in the war. No, I'm sorry. That's Geary. Geary's son was lost later in, I think, 1860.
Geary's another interesting guy.
Yeah, his son was in artillery. Now, real quick before we move on about the monument, if you read about the dedication ceremony, and Sickles is in charge of all that, he's still the commissioner of the New York Monuments Commission, and that's what this Greene's monument has come in under the auspices of that, even though he's from Rhode Island. It says that the monument will be placed on the west side of Slocum Avenue. Obviously, it's on the east side, and it's at the top. So whether where it is now is the original place they picked out, I don't know. I just know when they had these committees and they said, all right, we got this idea, let's do a monument. And they get a guy to sculpt it, and then they get somebody else to form the mold and stuff to get the monument, and then they put it in. Is it where they originally intended? If you just read the minutes of all the meetings they had, it says on the west side of Slocum Avenue. So
maybe it made sense on paper, and then
somebody showed up on the field.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Okay, Rich Snyder, he says, was it a mistake for General Meade to send troops already positioned at Culp's Hill to rush to the rescue of the Sickles debacle happening over at the Wheatfield and Peach Orchard? Was it a mistake?
Could have been.
Could have been, yeah, but it didn't prove that way, did it?
No, luckily.
Yeah.
If you ask Sickles, yeah, it's a monumental, and he writes about it in the within the dedication notes for Greene's monument. Sickles comes here and gives a speech, and that speech is part of the record for his monument. He makes a point of saying, yeah, Meade, stupidly, he doesn't use that word, moves everybody off, and it wasn't for Greene staying put, we wouldn't be here talking about it.
Well, there you go.
So
even Sickles, broken clock is.
And Sickles isn't the only one that says that, by the way. But it could have been a monumental mistake.
No pun intended.
No, that's good.
Thank you.
But the way things worked out, and it gives us more stories.
Yeah.
I'm all in favor of events that create stories.
Right.
That's what life's about.
Absolutely. It's all stories. It's called history.
Yeah.
Not story.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Lentz says, when Rufus Dawes recounts the actions on July 2nd, he says that when he arrives with the 6th Wisconsin, Greene hands him a card. What is that about? Why is that important? It was a Hallmark card, I thought, right?
It's, yeah.
Happy to have you here.
It had a nice rhyme in it.
Right. Thank you.
Rufus Dawes has never met George Greene. So he's been told to go over here and report to this commander that he doesn't know. You might have heard the name before, but he's never met him. So he doesn't know what he looks like. Presumably he doesn't know what he looks like, but he just doesn't know him. So when he comes over here, it's dark. He runs into a guy. It happens to be General Greene. And General Greene says, that's me. And he writes his name on the card, and he gives that to Dawes. This is all according to Dawes. And it's either to verify that, yeah, you reported to the right person. I can't imagine he's doing it. The other thing Dawes says in that book that he mentions this card, and that's the only place I've ever seen it, he says he doesn't know exactly where to go, and he doesn't know Greene. He's just going to head to the sound of the guns.
Okay.
So if he goes over there and it's really loud because of all this musket firing, maybe Greene writes down, this is me, instead of trying to talk because you can't hear.
Okay.
I'm just guessing here.
Okay.
And that's why he writes it down. Dawes never really explains it. He just says he got this card. George Greene wrote his name on it. I put it in my pocket and took my regiment where Greene directed me to go. So
maybe he thought he wanted an autograph.
He saved it and sold it later on for a lot of money. I made that up.
Mike has another question. Excuse me. How did Greene's men build their breastworks? Sorry. Hit the wrong button.
That's okay.
Hit the wrong button. I'm sorry.
They used whatever rocks were available. They used their canteens to try to dig a little bit and create some dirt. They chopped down trees. Not big trees like you see that are chopped down over there now, but the smaller trees that they could. And they just tried to build up the breastwork in front of them with whatever was available. They also created headlogs which is you build the breastwork, then there's a gap between the top of the breastwork, and then you put a big log across the top and use that gap to fire through.
So the log protects your head.
Yeah, it's further protection.
Theoretically.
But they're just using whatever materials they can. If you got a Pioneer, any Pioneer troops nearby, you can borrow their shovels or spades or whatever.
Right.
But they're just, what helps them is they have, they don't know it at the time, but they got all day.
Right.
Again, they've written that they're probably done around noon. That's in several places where it's stated that they finished building the breastworks around noon.
Okay.
But then you got the rest of the time to make adjustments and fortify it even further. That might
because you've got skirmishers out there, so you know that nothing's coming.
Out there, yeah, and nothing really starts until around 4 o'clock when Latimer opens up. So
I guess it would be a good opportunity here to explain to people the difference between breastworks, trenches, earthworks, because I often hear them. I often hear the breastworks referred to by all of those terms, but they're technically only one of them, and that is breastworks.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between all of those things?
So a trench is you're going down. You're digging a hole
into the ground.
And you're going to stand in the hole, and that's going to protect you. Earthworks is you're digging, you've got a shovel, like the lunettes up there on East Cemetery Hill that you see today.
Yeah.
Somebody's dug into the dirt and created this dirt barrier in front of, in that case, an artillery piece.
The lunettes, for those of you wondering what that is, those crescent moon-shaped mounds of dirt in front of some of the cannons on the battlefield. Lunette, small moon in French.
Huh.
Crescent moon.
Wow.
There you go. I learned that in some book.
I only know Spanish, and I know one word.
Oh, I don't know French. I just learned that little piece of trivia.
Vamoose.
Vamoose?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, let's vamoose.
And then breastworks are built above the ground.
No digging.
Well, you're trying to dig as much as you can, but it's usually built when the ground is really problematic for digging. A lot of boulders and rocks. You might not have shovels, and that was the case on Culp's Hill.
Because if you look at Culp's Hill now, you can still see mounds of dirt along the tree line, which is the foundation, for lack of a better word, of these breastworks.
They would try to throw dirt in there too. It makes it more sturdier structure, but they're not able to dig like to create a trench.
Right.
If they could and they had the time, I'm sure they would have.
Yeah.
Although getting in and out of the trench is problematic in a pinch.
Sure.
But you're using more trees, more rocks, more available stuff from nature than you would, let's say, with definitely a trench, but with the lunette,
right,
which is strictly just dirt. So.
And then that's it. We covered them all there. Okay. So let's see. We got one question coming in from Facebook. Joe Click. He says, can Lewis talk about the removal of Confederate dead after the war? Wasn't there a big burial trench on Culp's Hill? People love the burial trench, and I hate to break their hearts.
There are Confederates buried everywhere.
Everywhere.
If you look in front of the angle and that field out there going towards Emmitsburg Road, there were a ton of Confederates buried there. In 1871,
you think the swimming pool didn't dig a lot of them up?
They just sort of floated along. In 1871, 1872, that's when some Confederate women's groups got together down south to create and raise money to come up here and get the Confederate dead and remove them, those that hadn't already been removed, down to Richmond's Hollywood Cemetery. We like to think, and I've gotten this from other guides that have been guiding and have a broader knowledge base than I do, and they've been guiding for a lot longer, that probably all the Confederate dead have not been removed. And the place that they probably haven't all been removed from would be Culp's Hill, because it's not farmed. There's, you have East Confederate Avenue going through there, but other than that, there's really not any roads going through there. For the longest, it's just the woods that's growing out of control until now. So there could be a Confederate trench over there somewhere. There were certainly a lot of Confederates buried over there, and you can see it on the map.
The Elliott map.
The Elliott map.
Right behind you there.
If you,
Yeah.
if you get a hold of that and you go out there and walk the field, you can get an estimate of where these burials took place.
Yeah.
And then, depending on what the land looks like. I know there is a dip out there.
Yes.
And but that could have been an old roadbed or something.
Are you talking behind the 1st Maryland or 2nd Maryland?
Well, that's one little area. That wouldn't be I don't think that'd be a trench. But out there in the woods, there is, there's slight slopes on either side. It comes down to this flat ground. And some people have thought maybe this is the trench, but we don't know. It could be an old roadbed.
I would bet an old roadbed.
Yeah, because
I think the trenches, when you actually see them, are less. They're not as impressive as we make them out to be in our minds.
Yeah. Now I've heard somebody knows there is a trench out there. I can't say their name because I can't remember their name because it doesn't deal with my tours. But it's somebody with a lot of knowledge. I think they live around here and they know where one is, but they don't tell people because they don't want everybody coming out there and messing with it.
I know where one is, and I'll.
You probably got it from this person I can't remember.
No, we found it.
Oh.
And we started digging it up and throwing the bones all over the place and dressing in the uniform.
I get it now, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, we found it, but it's on private property, and I'm not going to say who or but we used the Elliott map and cadaver dogs.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Why wouldn't you use cadaver dogs?
Yeah. Well, we were very lucky in that we just accidentally met these people who were in town with cadaver dogs, and we're like, "Hey, we've been working on this thing."
That happens all the time.
And they're like, "Yeah, let's go."
I was out there again New Year's Eve, just wandering in the woods, and I was in the woods.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of rocks out there, and then there's a bunch of land, and
there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, it's impossible to say.
I personally don't believe that pit behind the 2nd Maryland is actually a burial pit of any kind. I think it's just like a dip in the ground.
It makes a great story.
It does make a great story, and people love to put their little mini Confederate flags there, but I just don't. What do you think, Eric? Are you what do you think that there are you know what my question is?
Are there identifiable?
No. Do you
trenches?
think behind the 2nd Maryland? Do you think that that's actually a trench?
I don't know.
Okay. Jury's still out with Eric.
I know Tim Smith says no.
Yeah,
but I honestly have not taken the Elliott map out and seen if maybe this lines up. But really, there's no major landmarks on the Elliott map that I could line up with what's out there today.
Yeah.
That's why the Elliott map doesn't really do that much for me, is because they'll make one little tick mark out in the middle of this field, and there's nothing around it, and they don't identify any building, no structures, no terrain features, nothing. It's not a topographical map. So how do you go out and say, okay, this is where this dude was buried 150 years ago? You kind of can't.
And that's the thing, too, with if you look at the southern end of the Elliott map, the southern end of the field, in Rose's Woods, it's something like 900 Confederates are in and out of Rose's Woods. It's so rocky there. How are you getting that many?
Yeah,
and there weren't even that many dead there.
No, exactly. And when Elliott came and did his map survey,
right,
he basically doubled up on the number of dead that were around the Rose Farm and Rose's Woods, and he doubled them on the map too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do the math for the amount of bodies taken to Hollywood Cemetery and the amount of Confederate dead, the math doesn't add up. As in, they didn't take all the bodies.
Yeah, it's almost like 1,000 off.
Yep. So,
well, I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of them got tilled, by farmers, and
that's what I'm saying. There could be some over there because, unlike Pickett's Field was used as a tank training ground, which we discussed in another Get Out of the Car tour, and it's farmed today, and so that land is used so much that I have to think if there was anything left, it would have risen to the surface already, like the bones did. I think it's 96 when they find human remains out by the railroad cut. Yeah. And you just don't have that type of activity on Culp's Hill. So I think there probably are some Confederates still over there, but where they're at, I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's got to be people. And
I can't. I'm not into going out and looking for them. You know what I mean? I don't want anybody looking for me when I'm dead.
No, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Let me rest in peace.
I like it out there because I knew Confederates in this case walked. They had to have walked where I'm walking. That's the appeal to me.
Okay.
And you go out there in the wintertime, it's all quiet, and you just stand still and listen.
And you can hear the echoes.
Yeah, they're talking.
Johnny Reb.
What are you doing here? Well, I'm from Northern Virginia. Okay, you're safe then. And
no more. Northern Virginia. I had a friend who's from, and this was 20 years ago in college. He was from North Carolina, and I referred to because I wanted to live in Northern Virginia I thought I did because I have family there, so I've been going there my whole life, and I mentioned whatever we were talking about, and I go, and that's why I moved to the South, and he goes, boy, you ain't in the South.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, you're in Northern Virginia. He's like, this ain't the South.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it is to me. I'm from Northern New Jersey. And and now Northern Virginia is like Northern New Jersey because of all the people from Northern New Jersey that moved down there.
They want to get rid of most
idiots. They turn it into what they flee. It's so stupid.
My other fallback is I was born in Arlington.
Who
lived
Texas.
in Arlington? No, Virginia.
Virginia, of course.
There's only one Arlington. I know. Me and Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, that's right. You and Sandy and Robert E. Lee lived in Arlington.
He did for a little bit. He actually didn't spend much time there. He's out west doing whatever. But, so yeah, I just like it out there. You're walking where, and that's the appeal of this place to me, or any other battle. I get the same feeling at Manassas and at Tetum. You're walking in the same spot where these soldiers walk.
Do you get like every time, even here, and I'm here, I go out on the battlefield quite often, and every time I actually get out of the car and like set foot on it, I get almost like a queasiness in my legs. And same thing, Manassas, Antietam, any of these other historic places, like I feel like, not that I'm being transported back in time or anything, but I'm on a piece of ground that's a little more significant than what I'm used to walking on.
Because you care about the story and the people. Yeah,
because most people just walk on it and they're like, what are we going to go to dinner?
Yeah. So,
want to try that buffet over there?
But yeah, that's the appeal. Now, again, Culp's Hill has more appeal to that for me because that ground is more undisturbed. You get out on Pickett's Charge Field, that's not the same dirt anymore because they've done so much with it. But still, they're coming across and that's what they're looking at. They've got basically the same view. And that is the attraction. You're walking where these other people walked in history.
Yeah, where they walked and where
some cases died.
Died. That's the thing. Walked and died. Like as they're walking, someone falls face down dead. Yeah. And bled out there, and you're walking on it, but like it's like a dust to dust type of thing. Like you're just walking on this ground that's just, and I always think like when I'm walking on insignificant ground, we're using air quotes. What happened there that we don't know about? Like before European history, was there some kind of Indian fight or an Indian burial ground or village or what was going on here before we could? And so it's very interesting to think about. But yeah, that's one of the things that's fun about this. It's one of the things that's fun about our Get Out of the Car tours is you actually get to get out and tread the ground that all these stories took place on. And by the way, you get to meet some pretty neat people, right, Lewis?
That's true. I've met a lot of great people doing this.
I remember when we started this, you said, "Oh, we're going to meet nothing but a-holes," but
Yankees,
dirty Yankees. And you said, "My God, these Yankees aren't as bad as I thought they'd be." and they're good tippers.
They're
let
good
me
tippers.
say, and
Bringing them greenbacks.
that's right. But they really do appreciate what you do, and we're excited to do a second season, a second year of these tours. Lewis puts all these tours together all on his own, on his lonesome, is what I mean to say.
I will say it. I spent a lot of time on them.
Yeah.
It's like I'm in school.
I know. No, and I appreciate you
I
doing
learned
it.
things, too,
Yeah.
in the meantime. I will say about this tour, there are some hills involved. I mean, we're not going up a mountain.
Right.
But it's not a flat walk like some of our
Good point.
others.
We'll be going through the woods.
In the woods.
So tick repellent if you're afraid of that stuff. What else? Sunscreen, maybe. Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know what
in the
it'll be
woods.
like.
It's going to be April.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
April, ladies and gentlemen. It's gonna be April.
Yeah.
And then what else? Water. Some water would be
Yeah,
nice
don't
for
eat
me.
death.
And then whatever you want. And then that's about it. Hiking shoes or sneakers or something like that. We're not going on like crazy hikes like Lewis said, but it's not.
It's not a
paved.
sandals walk.
It's not yet. Please.
Yeah.
Please. I don't want to see people showing up in flippy flops and sandals. This isn't, biblical times. We can walk. We have closed shoes now. Let's take advantage of that.
Especially if you got ugly toes.
Oh yeah, please leave those ugly toes in there.
They're
I never
distracting.
understood that. Toes are just toes to me. But anyway, tick spray, water, good shoes. And, if you care about sun and sunscreen and all that jazz, I can't think of anything else. Again, these tours are free. We just ask that you go to addressinggettysburg.com/tours and go into the calendar, find April 17th, click on Get Out of the Car Tour, and register. You don't have to pay. Just want to get a little bit of a head count just so we have an idea of how many people are going. It is brought to you by our good friends over at Mason Dixon Distillery. They are great friends of ours. They want us to be able to bring history to you guys free, and they are sponsoring this and a few other tours during the year as well.
And I will eat lunch there.
And we will go and eat lunch there afterwards, absolutely. All right, I think that's about it. What we'll do is we'll do what we typically do with the Facebook audience is we'll end the show here for the podcast listeners. But Facebookers, stick around for a second. We'll chat with you for a little bit, just a little bit, because we have another show to do later, and I have to brush up on the subject matter. But that's about it. Otherwise, thank you all. Facebook, stick around. I'm just going to play a little fife and drum for you, and then I'm going to use the little boys' room, and then we'll be back, and we'll just...
Taking Facebook with you?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll show you what the men's room looks like. No, we'll be back in a little bit. So thank you all for listening, and hope to see you out on the tour.
Our hearts so stout have got us famed, forsooth 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man for debt shall go to jail from Gary